I'm here today to update you as far as the East Baton Rouge Parish Sheriff's Office goes. As an agency and as a family, we're grieving the loss of Deputy Brad Garofalo. We've been in constant contact with his family. He leaves behind a wife and 4 children. I know they are hurting, but I want them to know that we are here for them now and forever. They are our family. We're also getting our deputies the assistance they need to cope with this tragedy. We still have another deputy that is currently fighting for his life. That's Corporal Nick Tullier. He was shot in the head and the stomach and has extensive damage. He's currently in ICU and owns a machine helping him breathe. He's in very critical condition. We ask for your continued prayers for his healing and for his family. And finally, we have a deputy that has non-life-threatening injuries, but serious injuries, and that's Sergeant Bruce Simmons. He is going into his second surgery this evening. It will be one of many. The bone running from his elbow to his shoulder was completely shattered. He now has a titanium rod in his arm. He has other reconstructive surgeries ahead of him, and we also ask for your continual prayers for healing with him as well. I want to reiterate some of what Colonel Edmondson said. We watched the video and we watched the actions of our deputies and officers. They ran to the threat, not from the threat, in an attempt to protect and preserve life. They were ambushed by a man that was clearly targeting law enforcement. Deputy Garofalo died attempting to get a fallen Baton Rouge officer to render aid. Deputy Garofalo died as a hero, protecting and serving. So did the other officers. I think it's important that we remember as we move forward. They are gone, but they are not forgotten. We will be forever grateful for their service. The Baton Rouge City Police SWAT team arrived quickly on the scene, as the colonel said, and they were able to take down the lone shooter, preventing any further injury or loss of life. I want to say this. There's no doubt in my mind after watching those videos and seeing how this guy moved, how he operated, his proficiency and his determination. And I'm going to go back to this. The first engagement, as the colonel showed you, was in this area here, where he killed one Baton Rouge City officer and wounded a second here. Then he had shot the third Baton Rouge City officer here. That city officer actually got around the corner and was crawling this way. They were out of sight of my deputy when the shooting started, because they had gone back this way in the building and he stayed behind the building. When the shooting started, he ran to take cover behind the dumpster. But when he saw the officer lying there and was clearly still alive, he moved along the building, and as the colonel said, was moving down the building to get to the officer to render aid. That's when the subject came from back around this side of the building and engaged my officer. My deputy went down fighting. He returned fire to the very end. He was laying on a prone position, returning fire. We could actually see in the video the bullets that were hitting the concrete around him. But once he knew that he had taken that deputy out, he turned his attention back to the wounded officer. He turned around, no further than from here, those cameras, and shot him twice. Then he moved on back through here, as the colonel said. So we had one city police officer injured here, 2 killed, 1 deputy killed. He moved back through this area, and his car was parked generally here. As the colonel said already, Corporal Tullier got out of his unit, checked the license plate, just gotten back in his unit where the guy came out. He started immediately firing into the car, all the time walking that way. His attention was drawn to a second deputy that was parked here, and at which time he started firing in that direction. That was the other deputy who was shot in the shoulder. And he told me last night when he got hit, it just went numb, nothing, no control. I am convinced that if he would have continued in that direction and finished off this deputy and that deputy as he did to these other officers and deputies over here. I am convinced that Baton Rouge City SWAT would not have arrived on the scene. We'd have had 2 more deceased deputies. This guy would have been in a position to get in his car and go on, travel, and seek other targets. But Baton Rouge City SWAT, you can't understand the shot that was taken here. They were in this area right here. They had to shoot through structure, and they took the subject down right here. The men and women responding to this scene yesterday are heroes. Just like the men and women that put on a uniform each morning and each night, they are everyday heroes. And I ask this community to continue to keep them and their families in your prayers. And I ask this community to continue to pray for peace. We will get through this. Baton Rouge is better than this.
Chief Deputy.
Good afternoon. I stand here as a chief with a heavy heart, number one. This has been a whirlwind of, as Colonel said, 30 hours that has been devastating to the Baton Rouge Police Department, our officers, and our family, but also to the city of Baton Rouge. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the overwhelming 99.9% of this community who have supported, who have sent me messages, who have sent my officers messages, who have showed their support for the Baton Rouge Police Department, the Sheriff's Office, and our state police, for law enforcement in general here. It is completely overwhelming, the amount of support that we've gotten. I'm not going to get into the tactics here. I'm going to stand here as a chief and as a former instructor at the Academy of Tactics and just tell you how proud I am of our department, our training staff, our instructors, our SWAT team. They did exactly how they were trained, without hesitation, without fear, but with courage, with methodical movement. They did exactly how they were trained. They went to the fire. They didn't run. They didn't go the other direction. They didn't blow it off. They went straight to it. And I could not be more prouder of these officers. I could not be more proud of my SWAT team. We've been questioned for the last 3 or 4 weeks about our militarized tactics and our militarized law enforcement. This is why. Because we are up against a force that is not playing by the rules. They haven't played by the rules. They didn't play by the rules in Dallas, and they didn't play by the rules here. This is why. We don't ever want to use it, but we have to have the ability to use it when we needed it, and we needed it here. As several have said, this guy was going to another location. He was not going to stop here. After he was finished here, I have no doubt he was heading to our headquarters, and he was going to take more lives. Our militarized tactics, as they're being called, saved lives here. That shot that our SWAT team made was a hell of a shot. But it had to be made. We had to neutralize the threat right there. We could not let it go any further. One of the officers who ran to this fight, Matthew Gerald, 41 years old, served less than a year with the Baton Rouge Police Department. Matthew was a devoted husband and father of 2. Before joining the Baton Rouge Police Department, let me tell you a little bit about Matthew. Matthew served in the United States Marine Corps and served United States Marine and in the United States Army. He was a Black Hawk crew member and served 3 tours in Iraq. He served his country proudly and with honor. His sense of service drew him to law enforcement when he got out of the military. He spent his whole life serving this country and our city, and he's a hero for everything that he's done. Corporal Montrell Jackson is 32 years old. He's a 10-year veteran. He worked in our Uniform Patrol Division. Montrell and his wife have been together for a total of 10 years. Montrell's son turned 4 months old today. Montrell was a loving and devoted husband. As an academy director, I served as Montrell's instructor, and for 20 weeks, I tested Montrell physically, mentally, and emotionally every single day. Montrell stood tall every day. He never wavered, he never quit. His heart was in service to this community. A couple of days before this happened, I went down in 3rd District and was talking to the guys trying to lift their spirits. Montrell ended up giving me a pep talk. As you heard as his post that he left on his Facebook page, his devotion was to the Baton Rouge City and to our department. And he ended up giving me the pep talk. I didn't give it to him. And that was the last time that I spoke to Montrell. And I'll never forget it. He is a true hero. I have something from his wife, Tarnisha, who wanted me to share this with you today. And I'll read what she said. Montrell was my everything. He was an amazing husband, an outstanding father, a respectful son, and a loving brother, and an amazing uncle, a trustworthy godfather, and a loyal friend. He loved his family, and he loved his fellow officers. I know without a shadow of a doubt, he loved his job and his city. Knowing this is what gives me a little peace and comfort. I know he made the ultimate sacrifice and paid the ultimate price in doing what he loved, protecting and serving a city that he loved. Thank you.
Walt, U.S. Attorney.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Walt Green, U.S. Attorney. First, we continue to keep the law enforcement victims and their families in our prayers on a daily basis. We stand here together, committed a team of federal, state, and local law enforcement to investigate this horrific tragedy that was committed in our community. And I say again, it was our community. We are coordinating with federal authorities to include the U.S. Attorney's offices, FBI and ATF and other districts, as well as other officials in the Department of Justice to investigate this matter. In Baton Rouge, the U.S. Attorney's Office, Federal Bureau of Investigation, ATF, United States Marshal Service, and the DEA continues to provide assistance in this investigation. Attorney General Lynch is being made aware of every step of this investigation and continues to monitor the situation very closely. Yesterday, as I said, we will continue to investigate this matter and continue to devote all needed federal law enforcement resources until justice has been served. And as the governor said, no stone will be left uncovered in this investigation. We thank all of our law enforcement partners that are here today and the ones that are not here on the podium, as well as the mayor and the governor here in attendance for their cooperation and teamwork in investigating this case. I say to all law enforcement, you have our deepest sympathies while dealing with this horrific tragedy. And now, I would ask FBA Jeff Sillett to give some additional comments.
Good afternoon. First, on behalf of the men and women of the FBI, I want to extend our deepest condolences and prayers to the men and women of the Baton Rouge City Police Department and the East Baton Rouge Sheriff's Office. As been said up here numerous times, these men and women are heroes. Something that comes to my mind is the first responders' motto during 9/11. They called, we responded. Think about that. Human instinct is to run from the fight. These men and women are running into the fight to protect all of us. I am personally, as a law enforcement officer and as a citizen of this country, in awe by the men and women of this department and the strength of the men and women of this department. With our partners from local, state, and federal agencies, we will leave no stone unturned, as which has been set up here before. We are committing all resources to identify co-conspirators or facilitators, bring them to justice, and most importantly, and in parallel to bringing justice, keep the safety of our community. At the core of American values is unity. As toddlers, we learn the Pledge of Allegiance. I'm going to quote 7 words from the pledge. One nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Standing up here before you is a unified team. Baton Rouge, unified. Louisiana, unified. America, unified. This will only make us stronger. We will work tirelessly to ensure safety in this community and throughout the nation. And please, every day when you see a local or state police officer, thank them. They're the ones that are keeping you all and me and our families safe. I want to thank Governor Edwards and the mayor for your leadership. Governor Edwards has been an incredible leader in this state and for the country throughout the past 2 weeks with all the events that have been occurring in the state of Louisiana. And thank you for your partnership and your commitment. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to have time for a few questions for either myself, the chief, or the sheriff, or Governor Edwards as we go forward. So,
Colonel Edmondson, our heartfelt condolences to all of you. My name is James Rose from Fox 4 News in Dallas. We just went through this very similar scenario, and it was hauntingly familiar to see what you just described. And I want to let you know that my organization has confirmed that Gavin Long was in Dallas recently trying to recruit, be a life coach, sell his book, and are you guys aware of that?
we know he's in several locations. As we work backwards from 8:40 yesterday morning, we want to look at the footprint of that car. Where has it been? Where has it traveled to? Who did he contact and who did he talk along the way? Any cell phone information we can extract and work on that, we're diligently doing, because it's important to us to look at that timeline that got him to yesterday morning and why. Why did he come to Baton Rouge? Why did he pick Baton Rouge? Why did he pick that location right there? And why did he kill police officers? That's what's important to us. So we'll get to that. Yes, sir, right here.
Can you and the sheriff do something with me, for me, with this map? I'm Steve Osentami with ABC News. Can you tell us where the officers were who were in their names, if you can, on the map, if you can do that?
We'll do that after.
We'll do that
after.
But my other question is, you can do that for us later. The other thing is, it looked like he was moving, he was running, or did he have a car? How did he get from this location down here?
He ran.
to-
By car back over here, and he ran. He was in shape. Clearly he was in shape. Clearly he was concentrated on exactly what he was trying to do. He was articulate in all manners of engagement. I'll just leave it at that. I think what you saw as him going into it was articulate in each one of that. Yes, sir.
Colonel, have you ruled out, Isaiah Carey from Fox in Houston, have you ruled out the possibility that it was in retaliation to what we saw here in Baton Rouge and Alton Sterling?
Well, we certainly haven't ruled out anything, but there's nothing to believe at this point that we can say it has something to do with that. Clearly, the landscape has changed since Dallas. I think y'all have seen that. As a country, you've seen that. So, no belief. Yes, sir.
Palmer.
Just two questions, and just picking up on the Dallas reporter's question. Can you confirm that Gavin Long was in Texas in the days before he came to Louisiana? And secondly,
I cannot confirm that at this time. No, sir.
can you confirm if his Twitter handle was Convos with Cosmos?
We're hearing all the same things you are. We want to apply it to facts, so we're not prepared to factually say that. But we've read and told the same thing.
Colonel Edmondson.
Well, as we look back from 8:40 yesterday morning, that is what our investigators are trying to do. In interviewing those individuals that we believe and know that he came in contact with, why did he pick this location? Was it because police officers frequent this location on a morning, getting coffee, getting their car cleaned, or getting their car washed? We want to know those same answers that you have to the questions that you're all having. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Colonel Edmondson, Ted Williams with Fox News. Have you been able to trace these guns at this stage in their investigation?
We're in the process of doing those, working very, very closely with ATF. The guns are at the crime lab. From a DNA standpoint, from a forensic standpoint, from a ballistic standpoint, we're putting all those pieces together. Melinda.
Do you know how long the gunman was in Baton Rouge? Do you know if he attended any of the Alton Sterling protests? Can you give us a little bit of the length of time that he was here?
We believe he was here for several days, and that's what our timeline right now is telling us. We don't want to go into any more of that because of the fact that there's some individuals we're trying to interview at this time, but we believe he was in here several days. Yes, sir.
As far as
call
the
it.
officer that's currently in the IC unit, can you tell us what his prognosis is?
I talked to both of the surgeons that worked on him. One of those surgeons is a personal friend of mine. He's operated on me in the past. Their biggest concern is the head trauma, and his prognosis, he's in very, very critical condition. It's been touch and go for the family. He's been in and out, so to speak. His vitals have gone up and down, and you know, that's all I can say. We just, at this point, as I said earlier, we're just praying for him. It's in God's hands, and we just have to see what happens. But he's not in good shape at all.
Mark?
Sheriff, tell us about the officers that you're bringing in to kind of fill the ranks right now.
Well, we did two things. One thing, we activated the Louisiana Sheriff's Association statewide emergency task force. So we have deputies that are coming from all over the state to fill in, to spell our people, not just us, but as well as Baton Rouge City. Louisiana Association of Chiefs of Police has a similar task force, and they're doing the same thing. So all of this effort, relief effort, if you want to say, is being coordinated through the state police, and we're having deputies at this particular time and officers that are coming in to supplement both of our departments in the patrol function, so we can get these people rest. Some of these deputies and officers have been working for 12 days straight, you know, and I mean, it was very stressful. You know, everybody's been fearful with the stress since, you know, through the protests, through now, and it's emotional drain on us as well as a physical drain. So we're making sure that we don't have people completely wear out, people that are out there that can make good decisions and are ready to serve the public.
Talk about ideology, what kind of, you know, groups that Mr. Long was involved with, or, you know, anything like that?
We're exhausting all areas within social media. We know there's a gamut of information that's out there. We're looking at each one of those individually, but until we can apply fact to it, before we can to make it a specific part of the puzzle or piece of the puzzle, we're not going out information. But please rest assured that everything that you're talking about, the question we're getting, we're looking at every single one of those on a constant basis.
Right here.
Do you believe, Colonel, that he had help here in Baton Rouge?
We do know this much. We do know that the person that killed those police officers and the person that was killed by the Baton Rouge Police Department is this gentleman right here. That's what we do know. Whether or not he had any other help on this particular location, in that particular car at that time, no. But what did he do outside of that? That's all stuff part of the investigation that we're trying to tie together.
Right here, sir.
When did he rent the car and who took the shot?
Well, that's going to be part of that timeline as we go forward to tell us exactly that. But the SWAT, you're talking about who took the shot that killed him? A Baton Rouge police officer, SWAT.
And in terms of a car, a couple weeks, anything like that?
We don't have a timeline.
Don't have a timeline on it. I want to be accurate when I do give you that statement.
Here in the back.
Colonel Evanson, speaking on timeline, the first 911 call that was made, first of all, were there multiple 911 calls? Is there any indication that the suspect made the calls himself? If not,
No indication the subject made the call himself as we're looking into it. Calls came in from the public. And I think you saw that. This was public all in this area. They were going to that store at that time. They were there. He completely dismissed them. He walked by them. He was in that area. They actually saw him. And that was the phone calls that you came in. Dude on Airline Highway carrying a rifle.
So that first 911 call came in the middle of this, that he was already moving around targeting police officers before the
Within that time frame.
So he had already, but I think you said he had identified, if you can show us on the map, where he first started and when the first call.
All right, if I may.
And let me just tell you this, the chief is not ready, and we're going to honor that request. He's not ready to identify exactly where his police officer was. So let's give him the benefit. He'll do that when he's ready,
Sure.
and we'll just let the sheriff identify where his deputies were and those names, please.
Part of the reason is that one of your deputies actually, the person who he went to, I'm curious if you can give us the name of that deputy. I don't know if that's possible. The deputy who he ran to, because, you know, that's part of the he put himself in danger.
Which scenario?
Well,
The first engagement or the second?
Let's start with the first engagement, where the first engagement was before the 911 call happened. Then my second question is, one of your deputies put himself in further harm's way to help a second officer. I'd like to get the name. I think Garofalo was.
Yeah, I'll
and then
explain
who
it
the
to you.
officer was.
Let me answer both as we go through. When the suspect vehicle pulled up here, the Baton Rouge City unit had parked here, the officer had gotten out and went inside. When the suspect vehicle parked here, and the suspect was walking down the side of this building with his gun, there were other people walking around here. He totally ignored them. He acted like they weren't even there. He walked up about halfway here to the police vehicle and was looking inside of it like he was looking for somebody to shoot. He didn't see him. He nonchalantly walked back. But this time, people had noticed him. I'm speculating, as we are, I don't know the exact timeline, that somebody at that time is who called 911. Because by the time he got in his car and went all the way around, that's when we started having responding units. There was one responding unit that came here. That's Deputy Tillier. To answer your question about my deputies, this was Deputy Brad behind the building here. Was Deputy Brad Garofalo. He is the deceased deputy. He is the. This is the beauty shop.
Beauty shop.
Yeah. He was, when he first heard the gunfire breakout, he came here behind a dumpster and took cover. Then he saw this Baton Rouge City officer come around and collapse and attempt to crawl in his direction. That's when he went here and started in the direction of the officer when the subject came around here and opened fire on the deputy and killed him. Then right after he did that, he saw that the Baton Rouge police officer was still alive and he fired 2 more shots into him. Does that answer your question?
Last question.
Governor,
Ms. Sue?
you come from a law enforcement family. I saw tears in your eyes when Chief Davidi was describing his last encounter with the officer. Tell us a little bit about how this hits home to you.
Well, it hits home to all of us. And I don't know that it's good or bad for a governor to cry, but I do on occasion, especially like this. As you mentioned, Sue, I do come from a law enforcement family. My sheriff happens to be my brother. I've got another brother who's the chief of police of the town of Independence here in Louisiana. My father, my grandfather, my great-grandfather, all sheriffs of Tangipahoa Parish as well. But this community is grief-stricken whether or not they're related to law enforcement. But for those who were the direct family members with whom I visited yesterday at the hospital, I will just tell you that that experience was profound. And I contrast the innate goodness of those officers and those families with the evil of this shooter. And having seen the video last night of how this shooter conducted his attack on these officers, and I will tell you, it is unsettling, and it is emotional for me, but I remain convinced that the Baton Rouge community and the state of Louisiana is going to come together as a result of this. I already see that that's happening. We are better than this. And I'm going to say this, and then we're going to wrap it up. I want everyone to know around the country, for 6 days prior to this incident yesterday morning, there had not even been an arrest in Baton Rouge related to the unrest that followed immediately on the heels of the Alton Sterling shooting. Not even an arrest. And none of the arrests that were effectuated even happened because of a significant act of violence. That did not happen in Baton Rouge until this individual from out of state came here and yesterday engaged in this just horrific act of violence directed towards our law enforcement community. And so it's obviously very...
We have lost the briefing. There it is.
And we stand behind our law enforcement. Thank all of you.
The governor was wrapping up this briefing session, and we had an interrupt like a satellite burp or something there. But you saw the questioning in any of these areas is very meticulous and specific, and they are very specific about what they